You're listening to the Around the Lens podcast, the home of high-quality, roundtable, visual journalism discussion about the news, topics, and gear related to our career field. Now, here's the host of our show, David J. Murphy.
Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 245. I'm your host, David J. Murphy, a freelance visual journalist based out of South Korea. We have got a packed show and panel on for tonight's episode. First, let me start with my regular co-hosts. Of course, I can't do this without Mr. Travis Keys, a commercial photographer based out of New York and chairman of the APA New York. Hello, Travis.
Hey, so I missed you the last couple of weeks. I was up in Acadia, Maine, for checking it out and just kicking in a little nature, trying to get away from everybody and everything, which was nice. And then I had some shoots and stuff like that. But it's good to be back, and I'm psyched for this show.
Great, yeah, me too. Glad to have you back. How was your trip in terms of were you able to relax and kind of recuperate?
You know, it's weird. You know, it's like having not really traveled and being so used to traveling abroad and shooting all over the world that came kind of to a complete, did come to a complete halt in March for me. Yeah. Like, this was my first real trip out of New York and trying to get somewhere. And for me, I thought I was going to escape and really kind of de-stress, and the travel was going to make me feel back to normal and stuff like that. And it was anything sort of but like that. You know, it was just seeing wow, the rest of the world is exactly the same, and the restaurants and everything, the people and people wearing masks, not wearing masks, and the bizarreness of it actually I think caused me more stress and made me feel like, oh, I'm okay being at home because I'm not missing anything out there. It's just the same all over. Yeah. So getting back, so it was good and bad at the same time. I think it actually helped me knowing that.
Okay, good. Well, we're glad to have you back here. Our other regular co-host joining us, of course, is Miss Evelyn Hochstein, a freelance photojournalist based out of D.C. Evelyn, how are you?
I am good. I've missed you guys, too, for the last couple weeks. It's been busy. I got married, so that...
Congrats.
A week of D-Space. So back to it. It's been fun.
So I should say Mrs. Evelyn Hochstein.
What'd you say?
I should say Mrs. Evelyn Hochstein.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you said, are you keeping your last name?
I'm keeping my name,
okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my wife did that. I never
thought, I'm not exactly young, I'm not in my 20s. I don't know if that changes anything, but I never really thought about changing my name, and now in life, I can't even imagine doing that. But it was fun, I have to say. The whole thing, it was super stressful planning it, even because it was a COVID wedding and it was only 14 people in our backyard. But worrying about everybody's health and safety and social distancing. But then it was really fun. It was even though it was small and not what I had imagined, it was, there's something to be said for small weddings. They're really fun, really nice. Yeah, nice. It was beautiful.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you were able to actually have that, because I know it's you hear people all the time canceling weddings and canceling plans and stuff and whatever, but glad you're able to get that done. It was canceled originally
for June, then it was supposed to be September, the whole big wedding, and then we just said, screw it. It's going to be 14 people total. So It was great.
Well, congratulations to you. And a new house, new marriage, all kinds of great stuff going on in your life. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Our guest joining us this week, making his 6th appearance on the show, is Mr. Alex Tetrialt, a photographer for the Canadian Prime Minister's office, based out of Ottawa. Hello, Alex. And you're muted.
Muted, obviously. Yes, classic. Yeah, hey, good morning.
Good morning. How's everything over there?
Not too bad. It's a bit of a wet morning, but everybody here has been busy apparently. Well, on the chat, but for me, it's been a bit quieter. Mostly taking care of the kids' homeschooling for now. Yeah. So.
Yeah, our kids actually got to go to school today in person for the first time. So, huzzah! There, we were getting a little bit tired of the virtual education, but glad to be able to send them to in class now.
Yeah.
So, hopefully you'll be able to get your daughter back in there as well soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. She's a bit lonely.
Yeah. All right, and our other main awesome guest joining us again for his second time. He did an interview with me a few weeks ago, so happy to have him on again to talk about all the great things that are going on in the world of visual journalism. Mr. Seth Porges, the director and producer of Class Action Park. He is based out of New York. Seth, so great to have you back on. How you doing?
Good. Great to be here.
How's everything been going in your world? I know you've been busy.
Yeah. I mean, each day just kind of bleeds into the next. So I think I'm busy.
Indeed. On our interview, you mentioned you were going to be working on like a series, like a documentary series, right? Has that started production?
Still in pre-production. I can't really talk about that too much.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm working on something in pre-production right now. We'll be, rolling cameras soon-ish. I think COVID is really like a by the day, by the week kind of thing. Like right. when you're planning production right now.
Yeah.
So
another question you may not be able to ask, but I'm just going to ask it. I'm curious. Can you talk at all about the response to Class Action Park from like a numbers perspective? I don't even know if you have access to that information or not, but or a general idea of how it was responded or received.
Oh, I'll share you whatever I've got, which is surprisingly little. It was apparently a big hit. At least the first week it came out, HBO Max announced it was the #1 movie on the platform.
Wow,
which is really cool. And I think they said a #3 piece of content, period, after Lovecraft Country and John Oliver. So good company. Happy to hang with those guys.
Yeah.
Don't have any numbers in terms of how many like hundreds of people actually watched it, but seems like that might have been a fair enough.
Well, I definitely was one of them that watched it on that first week. So
yeah. And I think what's really been cool is seeing people watch it more than once. It's a movie that was kind of straight to streaming, and I think oftentimes those are viewed as somewhat disposable. You move on to the next thing on your queue type of thing. Right. But we've heard from so many people who watched it like lots. Like I have a friend who is a fireman in New York, and apparently had just been keeping it on a repeat on their firehouse, which is a high honor. So.
That is awesome. Honor. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, it was a great documentary. I highly recommend everybody go check it out. It's on HBO Max right now. And if you've been there, it'll bring back memories. And if you were a child of the 80s, you'll just kind of get that kick out of seeing things, from back in the day. Definitely awesome job. And congrats again on getting it out there and getting it, released and whatnot. So
Thank you.
That's a great achievement. All right, well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, so let's not dilly-dally any longer and start getting into it. The first story I want to talk about is about sort of virtual worlds, all right? So I think we've touched on this on the past, and I've kind of explored the idea myself personally, but to have sort of a realistic or ultra-realistic recreation of sort of a real-world environment as used sort of as like a setting to practice your photography or even filmmaking, there's a lot of different possibilities and capabilities out of it. I've constantly in my head thought about it'd be neat to make a game, like maybe in virtual reality, where you have a scene, whether it be like a photo shoot or like maybe an actual protest or some sort of actual live scene where you have to move around physically in the space, compose your photos, and then you're judged and graded and critiqued on your capabilities in sort of this virtual environment. So it's a way to kind of practice, these sort of scenarios and whatnot. An engineer made an ultra-realistic setting, and he created these, a lot of these are free on Steam if you want to try them out, and you can kind of move around. And I checked out some of the videos, and it's pretty neat how well they're created. And so I'm going to throw it over to Alex, because I always like to throw it over to a guest for these first topics. And you're the photographer, more photographer centric. What do you think of sort of these recreations of real world environments, and what do you think of their capability to be used as potentially like a teaching tool?
My first reaction is just like, why, right? Like, just get out of your house and practice on your own there. But in the current context, now it's flipped around. It's like, yeah, okay. Like, if you're stuck in your apartment, you can't even get out, and you need to practice, or you want to practice, why not?
Right.
But like at the same time, though, like it's a fixed environment. It's like I'm going to use the game, move in, practice my composition, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then there's nothing. There's no dynamic in it. There's no people. There's no animals flying through. Like, so I could see it as a baseline tool, but at the same time, maybe I haven't thought about it enough to kind of see deeper, like the game you were talking about earlier. So maybe that way. But like, yeah, in the current context, sure, why not? I mean, you remember like one of your guests, Matthew Aaron Callahan, former U.S. Marine photographer. Mm-hmm. He does that like regularly with other games that he plays with. He just like
Right.
takes snapshots of it. Makes nice scenes, sci-fi stuff, whatever. So like yeah, there's something in it. Just if only to practice composition. But I'm more of a people photographer person, so I don't know. Like just throw me a model in there. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think if you're like practicing the landscape work, then maybe
Yeah.
that's the situation. If you can't leave your home for whatever reason, if you're quarantined or something like that, I could definitely see the idea there. But no, I was thinking of more as like, again, like the seed of an idea to potentially propagate, for a potential, teaching tool. Like Evelyn, you do a lot of dynamic stuff, the protests and whatnot. If there was sort of a simulated protest environment where you could go in and sort of practice your craft, or if you were like a college student or, high school student, do you think there'd be any value to that? Or do you think you have to be out there in the actual environment doing the thing to get any sort of meaningful experience out of it?
I'd have to say the latter. I mean, I think you could maybe at the very basic level, you could say a high school student would want to practice because, you don't know what the dynamics are going to be like. But honestly, there's so many things that you can't create in a virtual set, like the people, the sound, the space that you have, the clouds, moving over the sunlight. Like, I think you really have to be out there and feel what it's like to be in a space, in a crowd, and then work that situation. I don't see how it could really be simulated virtually. And I think the thing with the what I saw, I mean, I haven't played these games, but they look like nature mostly, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
So that I thought that was real experience. Like for protest, I can get, you want military people or police, they simulate what an environment would be like, right? So they train in simulated
Right.
environments. And I think, sure, there's maybe a little bit of value, but you've got to get out in the real world. It's ultimately a simulation. And with photography, things are out of your control. So that's what you have to be able to adapt to quickly. So at a basic level, I could see it, but beyond that, no. Go out, open your front door, walk outside, see what's happening, and then go practice. And with digital, like, why not? It's not like you're shooting film and then you have to go develop it. You can learn, you can get the feedback right away, immediately.
No, I think definitely, the idea of getting out there, the sights, the smells, you can't recreate that as well, in a virtual environment, or if at all, really, in many ways. I think it's more just the situations, right? Like if, like I don't have access to or, the ability to capture the same type of situations you do, in DC, where you're at the heart of, many major hotbed issues. Here it's like I'm, much more limited in what I can do. And there may be the same case for someone in the middle of the country or different parts of the country. So that was I kind of thinking like, and I have seen other sort of photo simulation games that try to simulate different scenarios. Like there was one I saw a few years ago where it's like you were photographing skateboarders as they did tricks in a skate park or something like that. But no, it's definitely not like your video games where you can, create the perfect, like I know all these games like Red Dead Redemption and, many of these games coming out, Control and whatnot, they'll have the photo mode, but that allows you to, precisely move the camera where you want and choose the exact focal length you want. So it's like, that doesn't happen in a real world situation, as cleanly as it does, like in a protest or in a sort of kinetic environment. From your perspective, Seth, do you think there'd any from a practice capability to doing a documentary? Obviously it's a completely different skill set, but do you think there'd be any sort of again, simulated documentary creation capability or filmmaking capability, like that would be something. You see a lot of these tools, as well on the video side, like for instance, like in a game like Smash Brothers, if anybody's played that from Nintendo, you can like create video clips and actually has a rudimentary video editor in there, and you can actually like make little video editing things. Or you've seen maybe you've heard of Machinima, where you can actually take the video game characters and make movies out of them. Do you think there's any validity to that? Like, do you think any of that translates to the video filmmaking real world?
Well, I think this teaches you photography in the same way Duck Hunt teaches you hunting. Like, it doesn't. But it's, that the answer to your question, I think what makes documentaries so interesting and unpredictable is the humanity of it. It's what people say about themselves and what they reveal in interviews. And if I was going to make a say like planet Earth style documentary, which is not something I do. Maybe there's something there, but when you're looking at characters and humans and motivations, unless you had some incredibly advanced like AI interrogation engine, it's just why even bother kind of thing.
No, I think you need people moving around. I think you need, activities. Again, like I said, I thought, if there was a situation that's happening in front of you and you got to, choose the right place, you're in a scrum of different photographers. You got to choose the right place to get the shot, and then again, you go back to your editor in the game and you give them your shots and they sort of give you a critique. How about you, Travis?
There was a Pokemon game.
Yeah, Pokemon Snap.
Game that was like exactly. That's like all that comes to mind. It's like, at least that had stuff moving around in it, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a game at the old museum. Remember, well, it closed, but the museum, the Museum of News, they had this computer game, and it was pretty old school where you were like, I'm your assignment, and there's been a kid is canoeing down the river, and the canoe capsized. You have to go take photos of the scene, and you go and you can like shoot the camera, and there are all these different things happening. And I remember playing this when I was like wanting to be a photojournalist. I was probably, I don't know, maybe I was like in high school or something. And I remember playing the game, shooting it, and then you go back to the editor. The editor was like, you've missed the news entirely. Like I was off photographing like the paramedics like waiting on the side and the action was happening elsewhere. So I suppose I learned something from that because it's traumatized me like my whole life. And I've never forgotten that you can't miss like where the action is. So maybe there is some value in that. But now the museum is closed, so nobody else can go check out that game. But that was an original, that's probably 25 years old, that game. So
wow.
Anyway,
I'm gonna go look on YouTube, see if I can find somebody like who recorded themselves playing it. I want to see what that game looked like.
Yeah, that's very cool.
In thinking about sort of the photo modes and whatnot, and even this, I was thinking of you, Travis, because, you do a lot of, commercial work, you do, portraiture and whatnot. That's a situation and a sort of environment where you can control everything.
As a tech person that loves technology and loves, everything related with it, I think you're all missing the mark on this. I think the potential of this is ridiculously outstanding, and you're sort of not looking outside the box where you can. We're in the early stages of this. If you looked 5 years ago, the photorealism of what you could do was okay, but now they're starting to look so realistic that I can actually all right, I know I'm going to Iceland next month. I know now that the computer will know exactly when the sun rises, when it sets, the weather. It can put that in. I can actually go around and look, wow, if I'm at this angle, I know the sun rises from here. I know I can actually plan my trip and where I need to be to get the best shot even before I get there and see the sunrise. It can teach me certain things. Like there's endless possibilities of using this in certain ways and learning. Like doctors now, they work on, virtual reality and doing surgery and stuff like that. They do all of that before harming a body or doing anything like that. You can do that with students and teach them things that you'd never be able to do in a certain environment so beautifully and quickly. I can put them in Africa and say, all right, if a cheat is this here or this or that's there, if the different light is here, if you're on a tripod, if you're not on a tripod, try and hand hold it. This is what it's going to be like. This is what it's not going to be like. It's endless possibility, and it's only going to get more advanced. So I think it's really exciting. My first reaction was, this is kind of silly, but when you really think about what it can become, it's amazing.
Yeah, there was actually a program or a game made by Sony, I believe, or it was co-sponsored by Sony, because in the game you actually were using Sony equipment. And I thought from a just trying to try things out perspective, in the game you could choose all your different lenses that Sony offers. So you can mess around with practicing with different lenses, some that you may not even have be able to afford or have access to, and you could try different focal lengths and zooms and all that stuff.
Imagine being there and you're like, there's a bunch of new lenses, and you're like, well, I don't know if I really want a 14 to 24 millimeter or if the 16 to 35, and you can actually just jump on and see exactly what it's going to look like and exactly the way it's going to feel and the kind of shots you're going to get. You'd be like, oh no, you know what? That's not exactly what I was looking for. Like this is what I'm looking for. The potential is really incredible.
Yeah, I could see that with my new R5. If I could try out different lenses, in a virtual environment, I would definitely do that. See if they're worth, the money. Which brings me to my other point. Evelyn, have you chosen? Have you made the final decision yet? Sony or Canon?
I have not made the final decision. Unfortunately, I only got to shoot the R5 basically twice, and I loved it. I really did. I loved it,
Yeah.
but I haven't quite gotten the focus tracking.
You
And
might
the
want
price
to.
point
There's some rumors about a new A9 that might blow you away.
and so I have to send it back, and I also don't. I asked Canon. I don't have one of the. I only have the 24-105 f4, and I would really almost like never carry that lens in my kit for real life. So until I can try one of the, what do you call it? I'm not the techie on here. The lenses that go with the mirrorless system.
The new native lenses that are designed for
lenses, before I make the decision, I want to try one of those. So that's what I need to deal with Canon, and then I'll make my decision. But the price point, the A9 II is a lot more expensive than the Canon body. I don't know about the lenses. I haven't compared the prices. It's about $1,000 more, I think.
I think they're the same.
The A9 II I thought was like 4,000 something, and the
What's the
R5 was like $38.99 or something.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
That's like 15,000 Canadian dollars.
What?
So that's 15,000 Canadian dollars.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I've got to try the lens. What about you, Dave? What lens are you using on the R5?
I'm just using 24-105 right now. I don't plan on getting into the actual kit stuff until I start doing more work. In that regard. Right now, it's just kind of using around the house and family stuff and vacations and blogs and stuff like that. If I get back into working more full-time freelance work, doing events and stuff like that, I'll definitely start investing in the trifecta for sure. So I'll get the 15-35, 24-70, and 70-200. That'll be definitely part of my kit.
That 7200 is pretty exciting. I mean, that they made it smaller, lighter.
Oh, and, yeah. I'm excited.
That's a really cool lens.
I just feel like I need a 2.8 24-70 or somewhere in that, even if it was a 28, whatever. But in that range is my primary lens, and it needs to be 2.8. I just can't. The f4. I can't imagine buying that lens and working with that.
Is it because you want the more shallow focus, or you want the light?
The more, I just feel you need to have a 2.8 lens for so many reasons. Yeah. More light and a shallow focus. Yeah.
Well,
Speed.
If you don't mind a little bit of extra heft and a little bit extra money, you can always go with the f2 24-70. I'll give you an extra stop right there.
That's right.
Is that really huge, that lens, though?
From what I hear, yeah, it's kind of gargantuan. So definitely want to try that out yourself.
I did try the Sony lens, and that was really nice. The 24. I don't know if it was 7.
Yeah, it's 24-72.8.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, well, let's go and move on to our next topic. We want to talk about, I have, of course, a documentary producer here, so I want to talk about documentaries. And one of the biggest documentaries to come out recently is the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. So, in case you haven't seen this one, it's basically about social media and, it focuses on all aspects of social media and it's sort of the ways that companies use algorithms and different sort of tactics and techniques to not only kind of get you on their platform, to keep you there and to engage you, so you just psychologically you don't even realize you're just keeping and staying on the platform. So highly recommend it. It's a pretty cool documentary, and it shows off some pretty cool aspects, and it doesn't tell you anything new if you've paid attention to social media and sort of what's been in the news with regard to what Facebook and all the other platforms are doing and sort of the way they manipulate people and algorithms and everything. But it does a great job in sort of putting it all together in one place. And from a documentary perspective and a technique and style perspective, and I'll throw it over to you, Seth, to kind of get your take on this. One thing that was interesting, obviously it's interviews and B-roll and news clips and all that stuff. But one thing it does that I thought was interesting was it doesn't create reenactments so much, like, because it creates a fictional story or narrative arc that goes along with the documentary. So when they're talking about certain aspects of, it affects children and it's, makes the family less connected, it's created this fake family, this fictional narrative that shows you kind of how those aspects are playing out. And I haven't seen that used as a narrative tool in documentary too much. Of course, I'm familiar with, reenactment, where you have actors reenacting something that really happened, but this is kind of the first time I've seen an artificial created scenario in a documentary. And I want to know from your perspective, Seth, is that a tool that you would use, or have you ever used that kind of tool in sort of telling a story in a documentary format?
Well, I have to see this movie to fully, I think, grasp what you're saying. But we're always, as documentary filmmakers, we are always looking to kind of crack that ever there problem, which is how do you portray things you don't have footage of? And there's a number of techniques, each of which has their pros and their cons from a aesthetic perspective, from a budgetary perspective, from a time perspective, from a anything perspective, whether it's recreations or animations or something else like what you're talking about here.
Right.
And this is something I think we are constantly thinking about, especially now when the COVID of it all is kind of forcing us to reevaluate how we're doing things in order to be a little bit more remote, a little bit more thrifty, perhaps a little bit safer. And so a documentary that might have at one point had like a full production reenactment, real high production value, almost like, cinematic reenactments, we might be looking for other techniques and other tactics. And so I'm curious to see how they did this. I'm always looking for new ways to show things that don't exist in the world. And I think a good documentary, without having actually seen this one, a good documentary, if whatever technique they use, it has to feel like it's the perfect one for this. It has to feel like it kind of clicks into place. It can't feel like a compromise. And so I'm super curious to see what they did.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, because they mention COVID in the documentary, and the documentary is very relevant. It's, of the time. So I'm curious as, how they sort of shot these, because there are scenes, the majority of scenes take place within a house with a family of actors who are, acting different parts and roles in a script, but there's also scenes that take place outside, in amongst a group of people. So I'm curious if this was all shot prior to COVID being a thing, or if they're shooting within the constraints of COVID. By the way, how has sort of COVID affected any sort of film production you're working on? Has it been kind of everything's on hold till we get things squared away, or is it kind of you're working around it?
Nothing's really on hold. Class Action Park, our movie that's out now on HBO Max, we shot this before COVID hit. We actually ended up doing a couple pickup interviews after COVID, but the types of interviews we're doing, it's one person on a camera. We shot him outside at distance. It was super easy for us to do it because it's a talking head. It's not two people interacting. It's not a scene with characters. So it's really easy for us to do that. Just sort of the cycle of how my projects are developing, it hasn't really, it's something we're constantly thinking of, but I haven't gotten to the point yet where we have to actually make adjustments as we pick up a camera and as we shoot. And who knows? There's like these rules are being written in real time. Yeah. Nobody knows what's going to work. Nobody knows what adjustments are going to have to be made if there's like an outbreak or something. The thing I'm sort of dreading is when I have to start traveling for shoots. Not just a matter of other people on camera, but myself, like getting to different locations and meet with people. So even if I'm doing an interview that's just a one-person talking head interview, if I have to get on a plane to go there, that kind of scares me a little bit. So we will see. We will see.
Yeah, and then you multiply that by production members, crew members, potentially makeup, all these other people.
I will say, and one of the things I'm thinking about as a filmmaker is using more local crews for things. Whereas before I might have had like a single DP, for example, and a single sound guy who might have traveled with me if I'm doing a multi-city shoot. Now I'd be much more inclined, I think, to kind of find local talent no matter where I'm going, so that fewer people are kind of constantly in motion and constantly traveling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great consideration.
Good idea.
Yeah. One of the core aspects that, the movie brings up is, and one of the key takeaways I took from the movie, and I'll definitely be, acting on, is children and social media and, their access to it. And, I fully intend to, as much as possible, try to restrict access to social media from my children for as long as I can. Hopefully, at least not till high school, because I know by then it'll kind of be a lost cause. But, you have children, Alex. How are you sort of handling, social media and their social media education going forward?
Poorly. Let's be honest, especially when the first kind of part hit, she couldn't see friends anymore. So it's like, here's a computer, so have fun. Yeah. And so that helped us. I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but it helped us a lot. But now we're kind of dealing. It's less about social media and more about YouTube at that age.
Okay.
So does YouTube count as social media? I don't know, but like
It
that's
does.
really what she's. So she's hooked on YouTube right now. It's really
Yeah.
about controlling that. Being back into virtual school helps a bit because she has less free time to actually get on the YouTube. But like even right now, like I had her put her headset on for her online class, and like we have to kind of go watch and make sure she's not opening another tab and watching YouTube while in class.
Right.
That's why usually we kind of ban the headsets while she's in class so we can actually listen and see like if there's any sound or whatever. But like the discussion is always ongoing. Like I'm also like my wife was reminding me like we're also bad examples of this because like it goes in waves, but sometimes we're all at the dinner table and we're all on our phones. And sometimes we kind of remind ourselves, oh, let's not do this. And for a few weeks, we kind of leave the phone away, and then we kind of get back into old habits. So it's really like an addiction. So like when we're as adults having such a hard time dealing with it, how like are we supposed to kind of guide a child in the same fashion? So, I mean, as a photographer, I gave my old camera, like my first DSLR, it's like an old Rebel XTI. I gave that to my kid, and she makes photos with it. So I created her own Instagram account out of it. But like I was just for fun. I was like, she was 3 years old back in the day, so I was controlling it completely. But now it's how do I transfer this account to her in a safe fashion? But she's not hooked on Instagram as she is on YouTube. So, but like I honestly like we're all, I don't know about we are all, but like it's a big learning curve as to how to deal with kids on this. And like I think that the Social Dilemma movie kind of reminds you that like all these platforms are created to hook you on it. So like once your child is hooked on it, like is it how much can you discipline a child that is kind of getting hooked on something that's designed to hook that person up, right? Like how much of reasoning can you do? It's a mess, honestly. Like, so I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not an easy issue to contend with. And, as much as I say I want to keep them, away from that type of stuff, I don't know if I'll have really that much control, really. I mean, they're just going to take a phone that maybe they find, or, they can get a cheap one or something, and who knows what they'll be doing with it, right? But, you got to try, right? Let me throw it over to you, Travis. You obviously advocate for social media use and whatnot, and there's a lot of great benefits to it from a business perspective. But do you ever feel perhaps it's too invasive, or it's perhaps it's being misused or mismanaged, especially even on benign platforms like Instagram?
I'm sorry, Dave. I was checking my social media feed. What was that?
Well, what's funny is as I was watching the movie, I was actually I had it in a corner on my screen on my phone, and I was like going on Reddit and other things, looking at my Facebook while watching the movie. So I'm addicted as well.
No, it's funny. I'll be honest with you. It's like you're absolutely right. I make a lot of my business. I do a lot of business through social media. I made my career and money off of social media, branding, after creating these type of brands. And I'll take an influencer or a celebrity, and I'll shoot their month's worth of post in a couple days, and suddenly everyone's looking at this false reality of what they think is real and stuff like that. I think social media is probably the worst thing to come out of all of this ever. I think it's the cause of most of our problems right now. I think it's the cause. If you look at social media, which I wrap into reality TV as well, and if we didn't have reality TV, we probably wouldn't have a lot of the issues that we have today. These false realities, these these shows like My Sweet 16, and it's just they're just god awful representations of everything that we're not in these false realities. And I think that we are so trained on, I can't tell you how many times that I'll sit there and I'll all right, I have to put up a business post on my social media, my Instagram, and then suddenly I found myself an hour later that I've been scrolling through Facebook for an hour, wasted an hour of my time doing absolutely God nothing. And then you tie in all the kind of false narratives and tribalism and separation of thoughts and free thinking that are, people are taking advantage of social media, and then people kind of pushing their ideas and then like defriending and stuff like that. It's just this endless vicious circle of we have to retrain ourselves and get rid of this, because in the days where we were kids and go out and play because there was no social media and interact with people or read a book or a comic book or just go out and see a movie or do something, that now everybody is just like this. I mean, how many times do we have a family dinner and every single one of us at the dinner table are like this at certain points, or at a restaurant? That's all you see nowadays is people on their phone, walking down the street like this. I mean, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And I'm so guilty of it, which is the worst part. And I know how terrible it is.
Travis, I want to have a family dinner with you. You're invited over whenever you want. Just come to the dinner table.
Do I have to check my phone?
Absolutely not. You can have it out. Do whatever you want. You're all invited for dinner, by the way. Just come on over.
I would love to.
Book a flight to South Korea.
I would nothing more than travel and do that.
So what brought this story up to my attention was the fact that Facebook actually responded to it. They saw a lot of issues with the documentary and sort of the way it portrayed certain aspects of social media and how it uses data. And I want to touch on the points that bring up, but I want to throw it back over to you, Seth. Have you ever had anyone sort of criticize your films or anything you've done where perhaps they said, oh, you misrepresenting Class Action Park, or it wasn't that bad, or whatever, or anything you've done? Have you ever had to deal with any kind of critics?
Much worse.
Or critics in general?
I mean, critics and social media are two very different things. I mean, the movie was popular, seen by a lot of people, so there's all sorts of takes. Some people like the movie, some people don't. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people wanting to criticize it online. I've got thick skin about it, and I certainly don't take it personally. I think the issues you guys are talking about are when things get very, very personal with people. I mean, social media is designed as a drug. It's designed as something that creates a steady and addictive drip of chemicals. It's designed with the purpose optimized to keep you staring at your screen long. It comes from a very dark place, and it comes from a place that its own, it's a beast that wants to feed itself, and it doesn't really care about any of its repercussions. At the same time, though, I think it's impossible to say social media should be gone. Let's stop using it, people, because this is our world's been built around it. It's like telling somebody who lives in the suburbs, cars are bad, never drive a car again. It's like, okay, how are you going to get to work? Or smartphones are bad, don't use a smartphone. How are you going to reply to job interviews? We built our world around these things that hurt us. And I think it's important for people to understand. You don't want to be the old guy ranting on about how rock and roll is destroying children, while kind of recognizing the problems with these things. And I think it's important for people to understand these things, understand how they can best use them. I don't think social media is innately evil. I think it's become a beast that must be fed, that becomes evil. And I think but we still have some level of free will, I hope, and I think that hopefully people can find other things to can find a way out of this. It sucks though, because these things have become so big, and these companies need to grow. They are beasts that need to be fed. They can't accept shrinking user engagement just because society is being burned down. Sadly, that's not really an option for them. It's also really hard to regulate technology. It's really hard to, and regulating it oftentimes results in more problems, especially from like a freedom of speech perspective. It becomes a really, really, really tricky thing that I'm not sure I have the right answer to. I'm not sure anybody does. And I'm sure if we create an answer, these beasts would be nimble enough to circumvent and kind of find another way around them. So what do you do, guys? What do you do?
I think what you bring up is really kind of the key aspect, is that you say we have free will to decide, and stuff like that. And that free will basically is either to turn it off, regulate it, or do something about it, and I think what I haven't seen the movie, and I know, Dave, you have, and I know part of it is probably talking about the unconscious level of how we've been manipulated and had, from like how every single thing was designed to do something that you're not even conscious of, from the like button to everything like that. So when you say free will, we're not actually really knowing how much. I understand what you're saying, but I totally get what you're saying, and I agree with it, and that's why I'm kind of adding on to it, to the fact that, like, when you say where do we go from here, it's like that's the valid question. Is like, do we regulate this? Do we say that, you know, part of this cannot happen? Do we say, all right, you can't use it this, like, you want to, like, I'm the first person to say, like, you know, the people that come out against violent video games, like, you know what, I played them all my life, and I'm not one person that I think I'm okay. I'm not. Exactly. Comic books are absolutely terrible for kids. Comic books, and now that what drives Hollywood and TV shows, like,
machines were illegal until the 1970s because they were viewed as morally destructive. But I mean, social media, I think, actually is morally destructive, or corrupting to us is sort of the difference. But it's tough because, like, okay, let's just say, like, we started regulating those things. Who do you think will be writing those bills? Where's the lobbying money coming from? Yeah, like what like these systems with entrenched power structures have a way of perpetuating themselves and using and weaponizing attempts to curb them. It is really tricky. You're dealing with. I happen to know a fair bit about how these products are kind of designed and tested. I was a technology journalist for years, and I sort of understand just the massive amounts of testing and optimization that goes into button placement and size and colors and everything. So it becomes like a slot machine where you just can't look away. I get that. And it's
they
dark,
touched on that exact
really,
issue
really
in the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They call it a slot machine? Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, but they're just taking the same principles as video game design. I mean, they're like, video games are designed to be addictive. It's sort of a feature, not a bug. You know, it's considered a good game if you sit there for 20 hours, not bathing or eating. And they're just taking.
It's about transparency. It's like, and that you bring that to, like, news programs now. A lot of news programs are just editorialized thought pieces. And that should come with a disclaimer, like a movie rating. You know what?
I think we're giving too much credit if you think that. Like, I mean, I'm a big fan of, like, put it all on the table and let people decide. But I mean, I think the past couple of years have kind of shown us that, like, the more people know, the more, people might know they're in a cult, but they defend a cult at the end of the day. There's a level of people are very unwilling to admit that something that they've been led to believe is true or right is not true or right.
I have a feeling, Seth, you and I could go back and forth on this with a lot of fun banter back and forth, but I'm sure into some other things.
Yeah, I mean, again, we were all, like they mentioned in the documentary, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? Even if you killed Facebook and Instagram and whatever, and Twitter and Pinterest and all these other platforms, another one would rise up, and maybe it'd be worse or more insidious. I think the key is that you keep the platforms accountable to what they're doing and their actions. Keep on having them come to Congress and talk to congressional people. Keep on putting sort of the negativity in the light, and even this sort of documentary, which again is being seen as sort of critically sort of a bit hyperbolic, a bit sort of extravagant and whatnot, a bit alarmist in the way it presents information. Even this, though, does make those issues more clear. And then I was thinking about, again, our own use of social media, and I think it's perfectly healthy. Like, Evelyn, I saw you posted some photos from your wedding. How long did they go from taken to put online? Like, probably, the next day, right? I'm guessing? Or that same day? The beautiful photos, by the way.
I completely lost. Thank you. Well, you were totally broken up. All I heard was same day, next day.
Your wedding. Your wedding is on Instagram, I noticed.
Are you there? Shoot. Oh, yeah. Yes. I think I put some up the next day because we failed. We tried to Zoom it. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
And the Zoom didn't work and everybody was logged on. And so I quickly sent out some photos the next day, though.
Why are you feeding the machine, Evelyn? Why are you feeding the algorithm? How dare you?
It's scanning your faces.
This machine is going to get...
you are.
To wrap it all back into the virtual reality of the photos and taking those photos, we're getting closer and closer to all these companies heavily investing in virtual reality, heavily investing into AI, and social media. So you're going to get the points where people are going to put on visors, live in these worlds, and be totally. There's going to be a lot of people that just suddenly, like, I know how many people that spend hours and hours playing games. Now, when you suddenly take a real world that you want to be in, that caters to you, that the AI is catered to you, that make you feel good and euphoric and designed that way, there's going to be a lot of people putting on these virtual realities and wanting to spend their lives in those places. Not I think people like us that love to get out and shoot, but the way the world is, I think that's going to be a scary thing that we need to think about.
As we're all
so weird. I spent so much of like the 80s and 90s dreaming of sort of these futuristic technologies. And now they're here. It's like, this stuff's evil, man.
What have we done?
Seriously, it's like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, it's going to be so cool in video games, or like super realistic, everything like that.
I wanted to watch Love in Space. I wanted my own robot, damn it.
Yeah. Oh, flying car. I worked at Popular Mechanics for years, and it's just like, look at like comic book level futurism, a lot of the old stuff that we cover, like flying cars and whatnot. But then you look at like what this stuff is actually designed to do, and I mean, I've become so cynical about this. I think that's one of the true casualties of this all is just everything has become so cynical. Like it's so hard for us to imagine anything cool coming around that isn't just used for terribly destructive and incredibly cynical purposes.
It's all just there to sell us ads for some sort of hair
it becomes
growth product.
A loop where just the ads are just going to be selling more ads. It's like it goes back to like when you're watching television and there's nothing but ads for more TV shows, and it's like they're just selling themselves. It's this beast. It's great.
People can't wait for that new iWatch or the new iPhone or the new this or the other people
as we're all sort of visual information purveyors, we all, in one way or another push out information and try to present the truth in the kind of products and the content we create. One of the conceits of the documentary that was brought up was Facebook or social media's overall drive to use misinformation as a way to, they allow misinformation, like COVID, falsities, or flat earth theory, or all these other like misinformation campaigns to fester on their platform. Why? Because it draws eyeballs, and eyeballs are an ability to sell to and sell ads to. And their response to this concept is that essentially that the idea that we allow misinformation to fester on our platform, or that we somehow benefit from the content, is wrong. Do you agree with that sort of dialogue that Facebook is sort of responding to with, or do you think that they advocate for, or at least benignly allow, misinformation to fester? And how do we combat that?
They absolutely allow it to fester, and it's two things. One is that it clearly benefits them because the darkest patterns, the most feedback loopy engaging patterns, are the most provocative. And anger is an emotion that drives engagement, and outrage is an emotion that drives engagement. And so, when conspiracy theories that are designed to promote outrage as a form of engagement, it absolutely benefits them. But they're also just, excuse my French here, a little chicken shit. They're afraid to call these people out because these people sort of who benefit from this have very sophisticated mechanisms for screaming the word censorship at you if you try to do anything to kind of rein them in. And so they'd much rather just have it, fester on their system than upset these people to the point, upset these people who they rely on for a lot of their revenue.
Any other thoughts? Anybody?
I mean, I think Seth's covered it pretty good on this one. Said more things than I'm probably allowed to say, so I'm just,
Is there a lot of misinformation campaigns, or, do you all in Canada have to deal with the same type of sort of various conspiracy theories that are more prevalent in the United States? Do those permeate their way up to Canada? And how do you combat those, from the kind of government perspective, if you can say anything about that?
I mean, it definitely permeates. There's a lot of memes going about like, oh, Canada living above the meth lab or something. But like, it's not like the fumes are going through. Like it's we're not isolated from it. It's coming over. But like, this gets into political territories where really kind of
right. Let's not go there. If that, I don't want to bring you down there. Although
yeah.
Do you anticipate an influx of immigrants from America?
Like
we'll see November 4th, or maybe by the January 20th.
Just send us your best and brightest.
Indeed. All right. Are there any other thoughts on this topic before we move on? All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump to our last topic this evening. Or morning, depending on where you're at. Evening for me, morning for all of you. But I did want to talk about blanking here. Okay, there was a story I saw on Petapixel, basically about this guy in Dubai who wrote about how, he was able to go into this area with his professional DSLR and shoot some nice photographs. And the area where he shot at was some sort of private business or whatever, like a large open area, shot some fireworks or whatever. And, it was like picked up by the company, and, he loved it. And then he comes back a year later and there's a security guard saying, hey, no professional cameras, no tripods, get that out of here. You can't bring that here. But, again, you got, people with their smartphones and whatever, taking pictures all over the place. So it kind of got me thinking about my own experiences, where I've been denied access or had any sort of trouble, or, people looked at the fact that I had a professional DSLR camera and somehow either judged me for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, either denied me access or gained me access. So I wanted to kind of get those questions out to you. Has your DSLR, has your professional camera gear ever been a hindrance or a help to getting access to or shooting anything? I'll throw that out to the group so anyone can chime in on this.
I think first and foremost, the ridiculousness of it is that it's the person that makes the gear professional. There's 5 million amateurs with amazing cameras that don't know how to use them. And as technology kind of improves, you find these smaller and smaller cameras that have, amazing megapixels and zoom lenses and a point and shoot and stuff like that can take just as good things as, and will blow away, cameras that were, designed, that were professional cameras that were out, maybe 10 years ago. So it's kind of silly. I know they're trying to control their own image and what gets fed out and what they think is a professional image and an amateur image, but there's no way to really discern that just by looking at the gear, what's going to happen with that image.
I think at the core, it's about controlling profit-making photography, quote unquote. But it ties into the social media discussion we had before. It's where society is really trailing behind technology in that sense, into adapting our laws or habits or whatever to it. So it's still just your professional looking DSLR is still the sign of the outward sign of professional photography, which we know it isn't, but it's still how it's perceived. So your security guard coming up to you on a private property, seeing your bigger looking camera, just assumes you're showing up to on a private, that's what I read in the article there. It's a private location with a tripod and a big thing. I did some assignments like this where I wanted to get skyline views of Ottawa, where I kind of climbed up to the top of a hotel, this restaurant there. I had to call in ahead and arrange for not a permit, but for them to know I was going to come up and do things and authorizations. I'm having mixed feelings on this one. It's democratizations of everybody needs to have access or whatever, do what they want, but at the same time, you're amateur, you're going to bring your stuff, sure, maybe just phone ahead, say listen, it's not for profit, whatever. So I don't know, it's a weird one. So again, as a society, we're still adapting to it, but I'm having a hard time having a lot of sympathy for that guy there, because it happens. I had my tripod kicked on the sidewalk by a passing old woman who wasn't happy for me being there, just randomly kicked. I don't know, I get it. I just don't think it's a big deal per se. It's been like this for a long time. I'd be curious to see how things were back in film photography days, because I skipped that, so I'm not that old school. But how was it back then? With film cameras, was access the same thing? But there was no social media going along with it, so there's a different dynamic as well. So that's.
Yeah, no, I've used the pro gear to get myself into various conventions and other sort of, media events. I just say I'm media and I show the camera equipment. And they're like, oh, well, you must be, again, this is about probably 10 years ago. So right. I'd say camera gear was less prevalent, at least the professional camera gear. Not, I've used film, but I never used film in that regard. But, again, having the large size body with the lens kit and everything makes you look professional. Even if you don't have a press pass, you just kind of come off and exude that sort of professionalism. And, again, I used it to get into a convention. But I've have also experiences where, if you're going to like a concert, they don't want you to bring their, your long zoom lens and your pro gear because, you could be trying to sell the pictures or whatever, So they want to keep that limited. How about you? Oh, go ahead, Evelyn.
Sorry. No, and it's sort of a different way going on in protests in DC. Now you see all these, I would call them probably activist journalists coming out. They've got the DSLRs and they've got the pro gear, but then they're wearing press badges. Like they don't have press passes. They're not working for the mainstream media. So they've got like a flak jacket with a big press Velcro thing on. They've got a helmet on. Press, everything is labeled press, press, press. And I don't see any of the real like mainstream publication. Like I'm not wearing anything that's labeled press. I don't really want to stand out as press. I think I look like a journalist because of all the reasons we've said. I've got my cameras, I've got my press pass. I'm just trying to like blend in and do my job and be identified as press. I always wear a press pass, but you see this other way of people wanting to legitimize themselves or maybe not get arrested or they also consider themselves to be press, but they're not really they're not. I don't know who they're shooting for. So I see that going on, and that's a really interesting phenomenon. But I do see those photographers tending to be more involved with the groups that they're photographing rather than being legitimate press on the outside. So it's sort of ironic. And then, for example, like the other day, this really ticked me off. I was down at Black Lives Matter Plaza taking a portrait of two Finnish colleagues because they needed a picture of themselves working as journalists for their newspaper. And I had my big camera there. Now, thousands of people come down with their smartphones and act like tourists and take pictures in front of Black Lives Matter Plaza for whatever reason. And you may think that's appropriate, inappropriate, or, and we literally, a concerned citizen came up to us and was like, what are you doing here? Why are you taking photos? And my head was about to explode because maybe this is going a little bit off topic, but it's like because I had legitimate cameras and I was seen to be doing something that was perhaps profiting off of Black Lives Matter or looked like it wasn't a fashion shoot. I mean, it was like, it didn't look anything like that. But the perception, and I think that's what we're talking about here is perception, was that somehow I wasn't treating the space with respect that it deserved. Whereas the people that I was photographing have been covering this and like being out there and caring and making this a huge part of their lives for months and months and months, and myself included. But we were then perceived as being like vultures or taking advantage of the situation. And also, I mean, don't you have any expectation of privacy? We're also out in public. So here I am in my press gear, and it's like, who are you to come ask me what I'm doing? Mind your own business. I'm in a public space. And what are you concerned about? Like, what is the concern? And I was so flustered, and we were all like, what? That I wanted to say to this person, what's the concern? What's the issue with taking photos? And I think that leads to, again, all the reasons with the access to being a professional photojournalist, taking your gear, or you just having a smartphone, like what people think you're up to, like taking your tripod to go up on the hilltop to get your overview shot. Like, why, what are all they, so they're all, again, back to perception of like what you can get into, what you can't. Are you investigating something? Are you trying to uncover something? So it's all really fascinating.
It just seems, ineffective. Just like, now that we have to take off our shoes at the airport, they've shown one shoe bomber and everybody's taken off shoes for years. Like, that's not going to stop people from doing things. A good journalist is going to know how to get the shot. Like, if I know the stadium's not going to let me in with my professional DSLR and 3 lenses, I'm going to bring a little point and shoot that I know can still get me the same shot, and I'm a professional and I know how to do it. You're not stopping us. You're just being silly, and I think it's just a control thing, and it's a false sense of control, and especially when technology gets better and better and better, those DSLRs are not going to make the difference of us getting a professional shot or not. We know how to do it on other forms and other ways, and it's just kind of silly at this point.
Yeah. And there's a lot of suspicion also, I think, that goes along with all of this conversation that's concerning too, people's attitudes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my concern is like, again, this story takes place in Dubai, which has different rules and regs and whatnot. But
it's control. It's more about control.
Yeah, my fear is that, it might permeate into more free societies or, the U.S. or Canada or something like that where, again, if we're seeing this backlash towards the press just trying to do their jobs by concerned citizens, when does that permeate to that concerned citizens are now in elected officials and now they're, putting forth rules and different laws to try and prevent, that sort of thing. But then again, now you're fighting against your own First Amendment, right? So perhaps there won't ever be, and perhaps we're overblowing the concern. But again, I just wanted to kind of address that theoretical potential possibility where, again, they're seeing, you're seeing it right now, Evelyn. Like you said, and many of our comrades or whatever are seeing that as well in different parts of the the states and whatnot are seeing that same issue when they cover protests. So it's just a misinformation thing propagated on social media. Callback. Seth, have you ever had any issues when, you've been out doing any sort of filming or any sort of interviews or anything like that where anybody's ever given you a hard time? I mean, I don't know if you're using more production level cinema cameras and like lights and crew and that. Have you ever, had any issues with permits or at least strangers coming up and trying to get in your film set?
No, I'm pretty good at talking my way out of such scenarios. Even if like I'm doing a documentary, it's like primarily kind of interviews. We're still doing some B-roll shooting, maybe some slightly illicit drone photography, things like that. And, you're talking to a guy who first decided he wanted to be a journalist when he was 13 and realized he'd get free movie passes. So I understand all about the power of the press pass and the power of the camera around your neck to kind of open doors or close doors and how to selectively use or make those signals disappear. So
nice. Yeah, that is a power. All right, well, I think that's going to end this week's show. Before we sign off, of course, want to give everybody a chance to pitch what they want to pitch. We'll throw it over to you first, Alex. Where can people find out about more in you and your work?
Instagram, which is also Facebook.
How dare you?
Instagram is Instagram is the best way. Twitter as well. So they're both the same handles. My last name, Tetreault, Tetreault, AJ that's
awesome. Everything going okay in the family there? I saw your daughter come in the video.
Yeah.
No emergencies, right?
Class break, and when she sees where both me and my wife are on conference calls, she likes to get in there.
Nice.
Like,
you got the hug, man, and that's a beautiful thing on any day. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I have to lock the door to my office to make sure none of my kids jump in here, creating viral moments and whatnot. Seth, what would you like to throw out there? Where can people find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, Class Action Park, the movie, is on HBO Max right now, so check that out. And, you can find us on social at Class Action Park on all of those amazing social media networks.
Indeed.
Awesome.
I can feel my addiction back to social media rising with each one of these handles. Wait till I get to my plug at the end for Around the Lens.
Go, man. Yeah.
Indeed. Evelyn, anything going on in your world you want us to know about?
I am taking my first COVID plane flight. I'm going to Arizona.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to be doing some election, talking to voters, and going to the border. So I'll be posting on Instagram. You can follow me at Evelyn Pics. I'll be in Phoenix and down at the border next week.
Yeah, I'm curious because you said you're covering the election and stuff like that. Did you probably not in your area, but like the debates? Did you have any plans to cover any of the debates?
Okay, so I lost the whole beginning, but I heard debates. So I did not cover. I covered the Democratic presidential debate in South Carolina when we had like 10 candidates. But
Right.
Now, because of COVID, no, I don't know how the networks. They probably have like a couple pool photographers in there,
Right.
and that's about it. So no debate coverage.
Okay.
Yeah. But I just got back to DC because I was out of town, and I think there's a lot going on here outside of Walter Reed, and we've got a COVID memorial. I missed out a lot of newsy stuff this weekend, so I got to jump back in before I go to Arizona.
Okay, great. Travis, anything from you?
I'm going to abstain from all social media promos and just say go out and vote. That's it. Vote.
There you go.
That's it.
Smart.
Vote.
Actually, I just voted myself, and my absentee
Nice.
ballot has been mail. So yeah, I agree. Voting is
Good,
a thing we
good.
should all do, 100%. All right. Well, I'm going to be a complete hypocrite and tell you all to go to aroundthelens.com because you can find links to all of our social media platforms there. We've got a YouTube channel, an Instagram channel, and a Twitter page, and a Facebook page. So we got a Patreon. So if you want to throw us a bone and give us a few bucks and get our stuff early, you can go on there as well. So a lot of options there. Subscribe to everything. Like, comment, subscribe. Feed the algorithm. Because that's how we get the word out there about what we're doing. So, but if you're under 18, try not to do that. There we go. There's my advocacy for the moment. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Seth and Alex. Truly appreciate you guys taking time out to come on here. You're always welcome back. I love hearing from you as well. Evelyn, Travis, thank you all again for coming back. We missed you. So don't ever go away. Just come on every week, all the time. Just make it happen.
Especially both of us at the same time.
I know, right? But we know we made that work. We had a great episode last week with our guests, so go check that out if you haven't already. All right. Well, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 245. Thank you all for paying attention to everything we're doing here. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, like I said, go on any of our social media platforms to do so. We'd love to hear from you. All right. Again, I'm David J. Murphy for Evelyn Hochstein and Travis Keys and Seth Porges and Alex Tetrialt. We are out.
Thanks for listening to Around the Lens. We hope you enjoyed the show. To continue the conversation, head on over to one of our social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter. To support the show financially, consider donating to us via Patreon. For show notes from this week's episode and links to everything else we talked about, just go to our website, aroundthelens.com. Finally, if you or someone you know might be a good guest for the show, get in touch with us via email at info@aroundthelens.com.